This is Sensei Buck Snyder. I'm a martial artist, nature lover, and total nerd. Come have fun with Sensei in the Wild. Hi guys, we're back with another video, and today I have two guests in my house I'd like to talk to you a little bit about. First of all, when you see these little things here, some people might not know what they are. Some people might think that they're reptiles, but these are actually amphibians. And you might ask, what is the difference between a reptile and an amphibian? Well, amphibians lay eggs in the water, while reptiles have their eggs on the land. Reptiles tend to have dry, hard scales on their skin, while these amphibians here tend to have wet, porous skin. And the one thing that they have in common with reptiles is they are both cold-blooded, which means that the technical term for that is ectotherm, which means that they rely on their environment to determine their temperature. So what that means is these two little critters right here in front of me do not generate their own body heat. They're the temperature that surrounds them. So if it's cold around them, they tend to be more lethargic and slow. If it's warm, they tend to be more active. So that's what these two little guys are. They're amphibians. Now let's really talk about what the difference is. This one here, the dark one, I'm going to have a flashlight and point at it. This is a toad. Look at him real quick and we'll talk about him in just a second. And now if you look over here at this one, this is a frog. Now there are a lot of differences right off the bat. There's size difference and color difference in these two, and that's because these are completely two different species, and we'll talk about the difference in them in broad terms though. We're not going to talk about these individual two. We're going to talk about what is the difference between a toad and a frog. Okay, so first of all, this is called a Gulf Coast toad. They're very, very common down here in South Texas. And you can see this little one right now, it's nocturnal. So right now I got light on him, so you can see he's kind of laying there, kind of trying to cover up and be protected, right? But if you notice, his skin is very rough and very dry. That's one common thing that a toad has, is they have dry, rough skin, okay? If you look in the back, their little legs are tiny and they're folded up on the back. Well, that means that they hop instead of leap or jump. So they can't do big jumps, they do little tiny hops. Okay, and also if you look at their eyes tend to bulge off their head. You see how their eyes are actually three-dimensionally sticking up off their head? That's a characteristic of a toad. Okay, now if we go over here and look at the little frog, this is an American green tree frog, and this one, as you can see, the coloration is different. But frogs versus toads, frogs tend to have wet, porous skin. The skin tends to be a lot smoother. And if you look at their leg in the back, I don't know how well you can see it, but that leg is huge compared to the toads. That's because these frogs actually can jump and leap extremely high. And if you look, the eye is the same as the toad, though. They have the slitted pupils that run sideways, which are pretty cool. And just like the toad over here, it's nocturnal. Now, this is a tree frog, which means it generally tries to live in trees. The other one was a toad, which means he tries to live on the ground. Right? Now, the differences in them are all the physical characteristics I just mentioned. The things they do have in common is they generally have the same diet. They're both carnivores, which means they'll eat insects, smaller reptiles, and they generally hunt in the same areas. Anytime they can get small insects, it's their primary diet. And so both of these little guys, I'll turn free in just a minute. These are both native to Texas, so they're not invasive. They're from Texas, and they don't compete for food sources, because generally the frog stays up in trees, and generally the toad covers the ground. So they're not trying to compete over the same thing. And one thing that's a characteristic of this specific toad here is that it actually secretes a liquid when you pick it up. People think that it's trying to urinate on you, but really what it is the liquid. If a dog or an animal tried to eat it, that liquid would cause the animal's mouth to swell up, and they'd have to spit the frog out because they couldn't swallow it. It's a defensive mechanism. So I know how to handle these frogs where I won't let them get that on me. But here's a cool detail. A lot of people think that if you touch a toad, you'll get warts. That is a total myth. There is no fact in that at all. I can touch this little guy as much as I want to, and I'll never get a wart from it. Okay. Now, one thing about both of these amphibians is I can touch either of these. The reason I have this one in the lid and this one open is, as I said, this one hops, so it can't hop out. This one leaps, so he could actually leap out of his container if I didn't have the lid on it. And this guy here, the little toad, I can touch him all day long. His skin is a little bit harder and more dry. Unfortunately, the little frog over here, his skin is very wet and very porous, and if I actually touch him too much, the oils on my own skin can get him sick. So I try to limit the contact I have with the little tree frog. Okay, so American green tree frog, Gulf Coast toad. So I'm about to go turn these guys free. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.